I will say this is a statistic, is that 73% of high intent search, financial advisor near me, is going to flow through third-party apps and directories before they land on your website. And the biggest issue is the data on these sites is incorrect, or it's not compelling, it's not managed, it's not taken care of, and you lose the opportunity to capture that top of funnel, high intent search for your services.
Welcome, Model FAs. I'm very excited for our guest that we have today, Jonathan Pack. Before I dive into his introduction and the meat of the show, so to speak, as a reminder, with our new format of the podcast, if this is the first one that you're tuning into, we do have really two main parts. So the first one is hearing about our guest's backstory as well as their area of expertise. And then as we close out the initial part of the show, we're going to be heading into the after hours portion, which is all about, quite frankly, just loosening up a little bit, having some fun, and trying to do a good job humanizing ourselves and our guest. That way, you can get a sense of who we really are outside of just a normal formatted podcast. So without further ado, part of the reason why I'm excited to have Jonathan on the show, outside of the fact that the service that him and his company provide, that we're actually working on a partnership right now to be able to bring that into the fold with Model FA as well. But not only is the service that we're going to be talking about today unbelievable, but I've said this to John multiple times throughout our relationship so far, which I think dates back to like June or July or something along those lines. But John brought me through probably the best sales experience, I should say, that I've ever been on the receiving end of. So we're going to be unpacking that a little bit more. And hopefully there's some principles that John has used that you can all implement in your business as well. So Jonathan Pack, his first sales experience was selling knives door to door, his first summer off from college. Is that I'm guessing?
Cutco, yep.
Yep. So you definitely get to deal with rejection and all that stuff along the way, going door to door. He then spent the next 10 years doing comedy at the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York, while working also in the web development at Comedy Central. And we'll have all John's social links in the show notes, and we'll also give him an opportunity to share those towards the end of the show as well. But you got to connect with him on Instagram. Specifically, there's been a handful of videos that he's released recently that has me chuckling. So hopefully you'll find some humor in those as well. In a moment of career malaise, as well as some creative fatigue, he decided to return to sales and joined, at the time, a tiny startup in the Chelsea market called Yext, Y-E-X-T, selling over the phone to small businesses. And that turned into a 10-year career, during which he founded the partner channel at Yext, which is what we at Model FA are going through right now. And really that's seeking agencies and companies like ours to bring their service to market and help their clients get found in search. The company has since gone public, so turned from a tiny company about a decade ago to going public and grown to thousands of employees across the globe. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. So tell us a little bit about your background. So I actually have a good friend of mine. I'll give him a plug right here, Justin Hoff, who do some side consulting for as it relates to like branding and marketing. And he's a comedian as well. So I always love coming across folks like you because it's not an overly buttoned up show and super stuffy or anything like that. So I guess going through your comedy career specifically, what were some of the things that you learned along that journey that you feel as if you've been able to implement into your sales process?
This is something I've been thinking about a lot because, to your point, I've been putting out a lot more content again, and I've gotten back into a creative flow. The biggest thing is authenticity and staying in harmony with yourself, making sure that the person that you're putting out there and putting forward is your true self. That is a must in comedy. And I have found that it's been instrumental in building relationships and building rapport and having great sales relationships too.
Awesome. Now, as it relates to, sales process, building relationships, building rapport, I think all those things can be tied into one another. As I mentioned when I opened up the show, when you brought me through your sales process, it was phenomenal. I think it was a nice mixture of asking great questions as well as delivering value and proper follow-up, right? So you were very professionally persistent as opposed to a nuisance, right? You never really like followed up about the follow-up about the follow-up. There was always something included in your emails. And I was actually just reading through your emails this morning as a refresher from last summer through now. And everything that you laid out was fantastic. So I guess, why don't we just use you and I as the example that we kind of talked through? So, you had reached out to me initially. I want to say, was it a cold email or was it LinkedIn? I'm drawing the blank there.
I think it was a cold email. Yep.
Okay. Cold email.
It was the height of the pandemic. I think that's like the moment when everybody was afraid to be prospecting and reaching out because they were afraid it may be a bad time. And that's certainly true. But I remember catering this email, making it empathetic and making sure that it was sort of a soft, friendly touch that was like, hey, I know things are crazy, but maybe we can have a conversation.
Now, when you had reached out to me, I'm actually just going to pull up the email as we're chatting right now. But when you had initially, reached out to me, how did you go about, I guess, finding me? So as I'm sitting here and I'm an advisor, say, listening to this show, I need to know who's a good prospect to reach out to and how to identify, if they would be qualified or not. So tell me a little bit about some of the pre-work that you did prior to touching base.
Great. And I do remember this specific window of prospecting. What I typically use, the tools that in my toolkit, one of the essential tools is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. From there, I can hone in on prospective accounts in any vertical I want using keyword search. And one of the segments, and this is a wide call to action for any FA listeners, to this podcast. One of the things that I had clued into through other partnerships in the financial advisor space is that it's a vertical that has been slower to adapt and slower to move into digital. And I think the pandemic has changed that a lot, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there for financial advisors to step into the new digital world and get discovered, right? And get found. And so I had sort of targeted this specific vertical at that time. And of course, the first thing I do, I see what the setup is. What does Sales Navigator tell me about this company? But of course, the real facts and information are on the website. And I remember perusing your website, and you and I had subsequent conversations where you sort of broke out these channels within Model FA. But there were several items in there where I was like, this could really make sense as a value add for your clients that you're consulting with.
Well, what I loved about your initial outreach as well is it wasn't just hey, David, this is, John from Yext. Would love to have a call and, learn more about your business and, see if we can be a resource for you. But what you had done was, based on the level of research you did in advance, you included that in the email itself. So I forget the exact wording, but it was something to the effect of, hey, David, Jonathan Pack from Yext, hope you're doing well. As I was doing some research on your company over at Model FA, I noticed, and then you started listing all the different channels that we have with our FMO and our TAMP and our consulting and things along those lines. And you hit on those specifically and said, based on what I'm presuming the audiences that you're serving and the services that you provide based on your website, I really think that Yext could be a great resource for you to help your clients become more visible, as well as, increase your revenue as a company as well. Would you be open to chatting? And I remember that, obviously I'm summarizing and paraphrasing the actual outreach, but I remember that vividly because so often I get, the spammy sort of automated copy and pasted type of messages via email or via LinkedIn. And it's just like, you can sniff that stuff out from a mile away. And I'd imagine that potentially some of your email was templated from other outreaches that you do potentially, but you added that personal aspect of that. So I guess, how important do you think that personal aspect is in your initial outreach? So I find, and the reason why I ask is because it's a bandwidth thing, right? Advisors may say, oh, I'm too busy to do that, right? So how do you know when and if that's appropriate so that you can be obviously efficient with your time.
Yeah, you're talking about the great sales mystery of overqualifying versus underqualifying, right? And making sure that you're straddling those two. The first introductory paragraph, I can pull that through as many emails but as I need to, but that it does not take that long to visit a website and understand where this fits in. There are strategic level partnerships that I work with where that may be more complex, but in general, bounce off to the website. And the demonstration of due diligence is as important as anything, as the value proposition. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that I'm experimenting with now is video prospecting. And part of that is the same reason, is that if I can hold up a sign with your name on it and get your attention and make you realize that I spent, however long putting together this video message for you, specifically for you, that customization is so meaningful. And I think that makes an impact right away.
Yeah. And to your point, I don't think it takes a lot of time. Like, you can go to our website quickly, modelfa.com, and look at, work with us and see the 4 different channels that we engage with people, in under 30 seconds, and be able to deduce what some of those things are. And if you know your product well enough, mm-hmm. right, which obviously you do, you've been there for a decade. So as long as you know your product well enough, you can figure out how to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together and quite frankly, start to plant a seed in the casting of the vision for me in that outreach of, okay, how can we do this together, right? Yeah. And the first conversation that we had, what I enjoyed about it is it wasn't like a super stuffy sort of sales pitch or anything like that. Like, I remember going through and you were doing a good job asking questions to get a better understanding around our business, which as I went through that, you perked up a little bit because you were like, oh, I didn't realize they had this, over here as well. And it could, obviously increase the opportunity in working together. But then it left me wondering more about your company. And because I think the law of reciprocity kicks in over time, where if you're doing a great job asking questions, I then want to, ask those same questions and then ask you towards the end. I think I said something like, so what are the next steps from here? Or, what can we be focusing on? And then you followed up then with, well, what do you think would be helpful, right, for next steps? And I just want to read this email that you had sent me verbatim, because I think it's a great follow-up for a couple different reasons. And so I'm going to read it, and then I want to start dissecting it with you. And I want to know kind of where you learned this from and how often you're actually doing this with folks. And on top of that, what's some of the feedback that you've gotten? Because I'd imagine you've received additional good feedback. So back on June 19th, 2020 at 3:04 p.m. to be exact, John had shot me an email that says, "Hi, David. Thanks for the call on Wednesday. I wanted to get you a quick summary of what we spoke about," right? So just make a mental note there, and get your thumbs up on an agenda for Monday. Okay, make a note there. He then goes through the summary of our call. I'll save the time and not go through that per se, but basically talks about the various things that we had hit on in that conversation. And then there was another paragraph that said, "For our conversation on Monday, what do you think about spending the call going over how local search works, then dive into the product piece, listings, etc. From there, we can set up a second call with you and Patrick Brewer, to learn more about your plans for a directory, provide examples of similar projects we've done, and see how we can help. Let me know what you think." And then, P.S., on a personal note, feel free to follow me on Instagram at John Pack. And just so you know, it's John Jon, not John, and Pack is Pack. So at John Pack. He mentioned, "I used to do comedy in New York and recently started putting up a fake tourism series called Won't You Come Along? I'd recommend starting with Boston if you want to check it out. I think it's the second post down." So there's a lot of incredible intentionality in that email that I just really appreciated, right? So to start to dissect that, you sent me a quick follow-up of our call, right? Obviously in that conversation, we went through a lot, and you knew that I wasn't going to be the final decision maker, right? There was going to have to be a team decision. So you then needed to empower me to be able to educate my team appropriately. Or if you're a financial advisor and you're just meeting with the wife or you're just meeting with the husband, right? You need to make sure that you're empowering that spouse to go ahead and catch the other party up to speed. From there, John, what you did a great job at is setting the agenda for Monday, which ultimately sets my expectations. So in your email follow-up, was this like a one-off thing? Is this something that you do every single time? And I guess, did you start off at the beginning of your career using a different strategy? And like, how'd you get to this point of utilizing this?
This is going to be a shout out to, I think it's Barry Ryan, the sales trainer who initially did a lot of work with Salesforce, and Yext has a lot of Salesforce pullovers. So our sales leadership spent a lot of time with Salesforce. So this is kind of a combination of this and instinctive response to our conversation, which we were kind of popping off. We were having a lot of different ideas about where this could fit in. And as soon as we get to those sort of excited brainstorming conversations, things can get muddy.
Yep.
And my biggest fear always, and what I'm trying to manage through an email like this is keep that intention or direction as clear as possible. Kind of rein in our wildest expectations and bring it down to, this is where we could see this happening. Here's everything in writing. This is what was referred to in that training as a mutual plan, which I think is a really effective way to manage ongoing sales conversations, especially as you go from pitch to close, is to say, like, a true mutual plan this sets up our next call. But a true mutual plan, which, you and I may have after this podcast, is to say, here's how I see this going. This is what, if we set, April 15th as a close date, is that good for you? Okay, we're in agreement on this. Here's what I need from you. Here's what you need from me, and outlining the dates which those will be fulfilled. So this is sort of a simplified version of that. And also, again, to go back to the beginning, it's an opportunity to clarify our conversation and say, like, I know we had some exciting conversations. Here's what it was, and here's where I think this really fits in.
I think, too, a lot of where advisors drop the ball, at least some of the ones that I have come across, and you did not do this, which is they'll have a great conversation with someone, and then they'll say something to the effect of, awesome, really appreciate your time today, great conversation. I'll go ahead and send you a follow-up email, and then we'll look at the schedules from there and see what works best, right? So that client logs off the Zoom meet, or prospect logs off the Zoom meeting, or they walk out the door, and then you find yourself just being a scheduler. And then you fall into the trap of people's lives getting busy, people being distracted, with a bunch of noise that's out there, on the internet, with, all the various things that have gone on over the last year and a half or so. And then you find yourself in the trap of just following up about the follow-up.
Yes.
And I think that what you had done a really good job with was, whether it was a meeting or a follow-up, we always agreed on like a time and day. So a time and day for the meeting, you had sent an invite, make sure that I accepted it. And then if it was, at a point in which it was just a follow-up that was needed because, we were going through an extensive merger at the time that was taking up a lot of bandwidth, it was great. I'll follow up with you, the last week of September, right? Or whatever the time frame is. And I think that what that does for you, from my perspective, is it shows me that you're going to follow through with what you said you're going to do.
Yeah.
Which I think is incredibly important. Have you always spent time in your process making sure that the next meeting was scheduled, or did that come as a result of, not having as efficient of a process as you think you could have?
It was definitely a learning early on in the SMB sales process. When we were making 150 dials a day, this is my early X career, to recap, was selling directly to small businesses. That was our first go-to-market. And when you're talking to a small business owner, you've tried calling them 10 times and you finally got them, and you can't close the deal on that one call, which is your objective, but you can't. Maybe you get this gets put off. If you do not have some sort of agreement on when you're talking again, it's a long road. Yep. It's a long road from there. And then strategic sales too. It's your next steps should always be clear at the end of that phone call. And ideally you should always have your next meeting scheduled.
I enjoyed too how you set out the agenda for that next call, but then you also asked for my buy-in. as well for that agenda. And then furthermore, because you knew I'd be talking to Pat about this, you double stepped ahead and said, once we get Pat on the phone, here's what we'll be covering there. So basically, I knew what my responsibility was as it relates to the information that I needed to share. You even hyperlinked a couple things in the summary section that I skipped over on this podcast, basically giving me some more resources to be able to share with the team above and beyond your typed out version. And you double stepped ahead to be able to set the agenda for Pat. That way I could make him aware of what we'd be covering, once we ultimately made that connection. And then at the very end, you humanized yourself, right? You said, hey, follow me on Instagram. And you mentioned, the fake tourism series called, Won't You Come Along? But then you were even more aware to say, hey, why don't you go check out the Boston one? Because you knew, although I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida, now and living here at the time, I was in Boston. So it was like super relevant. You knew what was going on. And it just felt like you, quite frankly, like actually gave a shit about me as opposed to, just another, name and phone number and email address on your spreadsheet of, the hundreds of people that you're reaching out to.
I'm going to shower you with some accolades, though. Yeah.
Yes.
So that was very much a byproduct of my conversation with you and your interest in humanizing our conversation. I think you even said, follow me on Instagram, and that sort of cued me up to do that. And it's invited a much larger exploration that I think you went to, following you on Instagram. I believe that was a shift you yourself went through. People had asked you to share more about yourself. In doing so, I see your posts, your stories. I feel like I know you so much better, David. I feel like we've built a relationship over the last almost year now. I had always separated my comedy. I always thought that my career and my comedy needed to live separately because there is some slightly offensive stuff in my comedy.
Well, it's comedy. That's why it's funny.
Yeah. So, you were part of pushing me towards not keeping these elements of myself separately. And that goes a long way towards that authenticity conversation and humanism that you talk about bringing into the sales process.
Well, I appreciate that.
Hey, Model FAs. I know you're enjoying this conversation, but I wanted to take a quick break to talk to you about the Model FA Accelerator. This is a unique collaboration between us and you, where we help you build a financial advising practice that you can be proud of. We focus on the foundational concepts around how to pick a niche or a specialization, how to price your services, how to construct an offer that people are going to buy, and then how to market it and sell it in a way that'll get people to sign on the dotted line and become clients of your firm, all while giving you the information to scale and set up workflows and operational processes that will allow you to reclaim your time and build a practice that doesn't run you. So if you'd like to hear more about that, go to www.modelfa.com/accelerator or www.modelfa.com. Hover over Work With Us and click on Accelerator. Hope to see you in the program.
The other thing that you had done was through your due diligence on, my Instagram and building a relationship and things like that. Like, we're big at the Model FA in our consulting on not selling through being salesy or bringing people through like a sales process per se, like your typical one. I got finger quotes up right now, but simply advancing relationships and making relational deposits along the way. And I remember, you had gotten my address and you knew based on my Instagram that, of the type of car that I had, right? The BMW. And you went out of your way to get me BMW branded driving gloves so that I'd be warm when I was driving in Boston. Now, granted, granted, they're in my drawer right now, and I'm not using them currently here in Florida, but that doesn't matter. What matters is, again, it's a thought that counts. It was hyper personalized. It wasn't just like hey, here's a Starbucks gift card or something silly like that. And I think I told you along the way, just based on my experience, hey, we're going to do business with you. Let me worry about getting our team on board, but I wanted to do business with you regardless of your service. And we're going to get into that in a second, but regardless of the service, just because I had an opportunity to get to know, like, and trust you in advance. And I feel like when you're an advisor, right, that's, I think, of the utmost importance, right? You need to make sure that the folks that you're in front of, they are given an opportunity to get to know, like, and trust you. And then it doesn't matter so much, the fancy charts and projections and the planning and things like that, you're obviously going to provide. It's more so, can they see themselves enjoying the conversations with you? And, for that with you and I, John, has been fantastic.
Likewise. Yeah.
So now that we're done complimenting each other, so talk to me about Yext. So we're in the midst of, formalizing a partnership to where everyone at Model FA will be able to, explore if this is going to be a good fit for them. So I want to start to highlight, I guess, the importance of digital presence and searchability in general. And then let's get into the actual technical side of how Yext actually works. So assume that everyone listening has never come across Yext, and assume that everyone listening hasn't come across Yext, and you're on an initial phone call with them. What's the spiel that you tend to start with when you describe Yext to someone who's never heard of it before?
Who's never heard of it before? I will always look to find that common understanding, which is, have you ever looked for a pizza place online? And a lot of times we wind up on Google Maps, or we wind up on Yelp, or any one of these, what we'll call third-party publishers, online directories, right? What's really incredible is that that's not just you, that's everybody's global experience, is that most of the time when we search for something locally, we are going to wind up on a local directory. And in fact, I will say this is a statistic, is that 73% of high intent search, financial advisor near me, is going to flow through third-party apps and directories before they land on your website. And the biggest issue is the data on these sites is incorrect, or it's not compelling, it's not managed, it's not taken care of, and you lose the opportunity to capture that top of funnel, high intent search for your services.
So if I'm an advisor and I come to you and say, oh, no, John, I already have Google My Business, right? What would you say to that?
Well, what's really interesting is when we think about how Google picks who gets to sit at the top of a financial advisor search, local financial advisor search, one of the things that they're looking at to make that determination is, how much do I trust my data? And one of the ways that Google verifies and validates their own data set is they look at all these other directories across the internet. They look at all these other places where your business information is. And the more consistent that is, the more they trust their own data set, the more problems they see, the more inconsistencies or just lack of validated data, lack of additional data, the less they trust that information. And so that's one of the keys to local search performance and discoverability, is making sure that you are everywhere and you are 100% consistent. And then, of course, rich content, photos, logos, things like that, that's icing on the cake.
So another objection. So, hey, John, I appreciate it. Don't worry, my information on my website is accurate and up to date, and the information on Google My Business is accurate and up to date. Now, I know this, right, having gone through your process, but a lot of advisors may think that that's all you really need to have it on. But give some context to our listeners. How many other directories are there that they could be listed on? Because I want people to start to realize the opportunity that they're missing by not being listed everywhere. Because essentially what you're saying is, the more places you're listed and the more accurate the information, the more likely you are to be a result on the top of someone's hyper-localized search for a financial advisor. So how many other platforms are there? And name a few, preferably name some that people may know of, and then name some that people may not know of, because I want people to start to see the gaps in their digital strategy.
Sure. Well, we all think about Google My Business. We all think about Yelp. We also think about Bing. Bing still has a 5 to 10% search share.
I think like 10 people use that, right?
Yeah. Sorry, 5 to 10 person market share, not percent. No, but yp.com, everyone has yellowpages.com. One of the ones that you may not be thinking of that I think it's important to think about, that Yext has an exclusive relationship with currently, is Alexa, Amazon Alexa. If, asks Alexa to, is this financial advisor open right now? Can you call this financial advisor? You want your data to be in there and accurate. And getting it in there is something that you typically don't have control over. To add a layer to the storyline here, because I don't think I really explained how Yext plays into these directories. of which we're partnered with the top 80 publishers online.
Oh, so there's 80. So if you're an advisor and you're listening to this right now, if you are not listed on all 80 of these directories, there's some clients out there that aren't finding you that you should be serving. So sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So Yext has built private partnerships with these publishers. What happens when we partner with a publisher is we develop basically private connections for the technology wonks out there. We have private APIs with each of these publishers. And what that means is we give you a single platform, a single dashboard where you log in, put in all of your information. We're able to take over and fix and correct any listings that are out there, create listings where you don't have them, and then fill them out with any rich content you put in the Yext dashboard. And the last thing that I'll note that plays into what you were bringing up, David, in terms of handling that objection of, my information's accurate on Google. Yext maintains a real-time connection to these publishers. And what that allows you to do is, first, we all know the holiday hours thing if we're trying to contact a business. And the worst thing, it drives me crazy. I don't know, David, if this is this is my own thing, but when I want to contact a business on a holiday and I get that message from Google that's like, these might be the hours. It's a holiday, but I don't know. And so what you're able to do with Yext is pre-schedule your holiday hours, pre-schedule any changes to your data, upload new photos whenever you want. Everything updates in real time. And so you have this real-time connection to your your customer-facing brand, right? The customer-facing part of and so that's that ongoing value. And David, I think one of the things you were driving at too, which is sort of longer, I'll make it as succinct as possible, is that even though you've claimed your Google My Business listing, and you've sent through all of your information and it's been consistent for a while, it's important to understand that that is not permanent, that your manual business claim can be overwritten by other data sources. If you take out your phone right now and search for any business near you, shake your phone in Google Maps, and it will give you the option to edit or suggest a change. And those external suggested changes have a high trust value from, especially if you're a local guy, they have a high trust value from Google. So Google could change your information without your permission. And
so it's almost like, I guess the company that comes to mind is like a Wikipedia. You can kind of like edit other people's stuff is what you're saying?
Yeah. And what will happen is that it will go into this queue with Google where they run it through a compilation or conflation algorithm. They'll basically try to figure out like, do I like this? Is this true or not? But I want to give you a really fun example from a few years ago. This was highly publicized in the search community, which was that there were suddenly all these businesses were getting very upset because their Google My Business was showing up as closed. And so they had manually claimed their business online. And suddenly it's like, well, why is it saying I'm closed? The reason is that there are certain data sets that Google is going to trust more than your 2-year-old claim that you put on the listing. And to think about it from Google's perspective, how often does a business reach out to Google and say, we're closed?
I'd say
never.
Yeah.
And so Google is going to get if Google gets any signal that says this business is closed, they're going to treat that with pretty high authority because it's like, well, the business owner is going to reach out and tell me. So just something to think about. And hopefully I'm not getting too.
Well, if I had an ice cream shop and I was competing with an ice cream shop down the street, I'd probably just submit that they're closed.
Yeah, that they're closed. Don't get any ideas, listeners. Don't make our job harder.
And so what you're saying though is advisors, or really any other industry that you serve, they don't have to go in and change something 80 different times on 80 different platforms. It's a one portal, one update, click, and it disperses from there.
Exactly. And thank you for distilling that.
Okay.
After my rant.
So in summary.
In summary, yes, one place where you manage all of your data across all these sites, and it's all in one place. So you just go there, fill it out, make changes instead of going to 80 different directories and do that.
Now, what's the importance? You've mentioned this a few different times of, I think the exact phrase that you use is rich content, right? So when I think of Google My Business, I think about address, phone number, maybe email, website link, hours of operation, and reviews. Those are the things that, come to mind, first. And what you're saying is that on all of these listings, you can also include photos and things along those lines. So help me and the rest of our listeners understand why that is important.
What a perfect vertical for personalization, right? You talk about showing, your humanity, your humanness. And what I would recommend for financial advisors is to include a headshot of yourself on your listings. Maybe a photo of the outside of your office. That helps people find it when they're pulling up. But what we found in some previous studies is that there are many fields in Yext. And when people fill out more than just those basic fields, they get 2.5 times the views. Part of that is that these sites tend to prefer to showcase rich content. It means that it's a managed listing and they feel more confident in the data. Again, there's that accuracy conversation. But the other thing is just another vertical. If you're choosing a dentist, are you going to choose the one that it's just like name, address, and phone number? Or are you going to choose the one that looks like that has some sort of life behind it?
Right.
So
totally.
So I think it's both a user experience and it's a local search thing.
Awesome. So before we get into, I know you're excited to talk about your favorite book, but before we get into that, is there anything that I did not ask you that would be helpful for our audience to know, specifically as it relates to the importance of their listings, their online presence, and how you guys can help?
Yeah, I think Yext is on the cusp of some really exciting change. And that change puts us squarely in the space of a search. We are now officially a search company. And I want you to think about the listings as top of the funnel, like you're capturing this unbranded search, somebody looking for a financial advisor near you. This is something, David, that I haven't been able to share with you yet because it's brand new to partner. One of the most expensive clicks is a click off of your FAs, off of your own website, right? So you bring somebody from the top of the funnel through that Google search, you get them to your website, and then they ask a question on that site or the clumsy navigation. They don't get the answer they're looking for, and they go back and they search Google. And when they search Google, they are going to be advertised to by all of your competitors or other potential funnels that are trying to drag them in. And so what Yext is working on is we have that top of the funnel with listings, and now we're working on the bottom of the funnel through something called Yext Answers. And it's all about Google-like experience on your website. So people could go to a financial advisor website and search for, advice, search for simple things like, what are your hours of operation? Are you open now? And you can do it in natural language. And it will help ensure that rather than we envision a world where we're not navigating through site nav anymore. You literally search in natural language on a site and you get the answer you need. So I share that just to share where our vision is going is we're here to help you bring in more customers. And then we're also here to help you convert more customers and ensure that once you bring them to your site, you give them a meaningful call to action and get them to book an appointment or a phone call.
Awesome. So for those of you who are listening, I know there's a number of folks I work with where they get a decent amount of leads off of their website that come from various sources. So this is a way in which you can amplify that. And for those of you who may not be getting a ton of phone calls or contact submission forms submitted through your website, maybe this is your answer. So as I mentioned throughout the show, we're shooting this episode right now on March 5th of 2021. So by the time that this is released, I'd imagine that the partnership will be finalized between us. So assuming that that's the case, we'll be able to help you with this through Model FA. And in the event that it's not finalized, as a way to not delay your ability to integrate this, John, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I mean, I would throw my email or I can share my email.
What's your email? Because your email will be in the show notes too, but just in case someone's listening and taking that.
JPAC, JPACK at Yext.com. And what I'll do is I'll bring you to our small business team that will be able to set you up with an account directly.
Awesome. So like I said, if we don't have that
partnership in place, but we'll have the partnership in place by then.
We will. But in the event that, it's a couple weeks out or something like that.
I'd say that, dear listeners, I say that tongue in cheek with a smile on my face.
For sure. So before we head into the after hours portion, John, tell me about your favorite book. So I have not had the chance to read this one yet, but it is called Watership Down. Tell me more about that.
Watership Down I read when I was probably 24. I think a lot of people know it from the animated Disney movie. There was one in the 70s, I think that was made. And then there was one recently made. What everybody says about, I haven't seen them. These are animated films. Everybody says they're really dark. And granted, the book is kind of dark, but it has a ton of heart to it. When you do read it, we need to have a conversation about it. It is a book about rabbits. It's a book about rabbits. It's a fictitious book. It's fiction. It's about a warren of rabbits, and one in particular has a vision of their warren, their home bathed in blood, and nobody believes him. And he convinces a cohort of rabbits that they need to get out and find a new home. And it's about their journey to find a new warren. And along the way, it's intercut with, no joke, I'm telling you, this is so well done. It's intercut with stories about the rabbit's faith, their religion. The black rabbit, El Rare, I think is how it's pronounced, is sort of their spiritual, their god of, and along the way, they encounter other rabbit communities, and each is sort of a representation of different governments or different approaches to civil society. And of course, each time they discover the darkness that lies behind that. I will give no spoilers, but it was the best ending I've ever read, where the rabbit's faith, the story of these characters that we love along the course of this novel, find what they're looking for, and they tie it all together. And boy, is it a meditation on perseverance and life. And it's a good one.
Well, I never thought that I'd be on the cusp of learning from rabbits, but as you were going through that, so as you were going through that description, I just went on Audible and bought that. So it is now in the queue. So in the coming weeks, I'll touch base and we can riff on that for a bit.
Great. I mean, my hope is that the narrator doesn't treat it with too much whimsy, because it's an adult book. It's not a children's book, which is the irony of Disney making it into an animated movie. It's like, this isn't for kids. That's
funny.
Heavy stuff. Yeah. Highly recommend it if you enjoy fiction. It's just a beautiful book.
Awesome. Appreciate that. So John, before we get into the after hours portion, you already shared your email, jpack@yext.com. And your Instagram, I believe, is @JohnPack. Again, John is with a Jon, drop the H. One of my best friends, Jonathan Sheehan, is a Jon as well. So I always come to your guys' defense with spelling. So any other ways that would be helpful to reach out, or are those the two main mediums, would you say?
Those are definitely the two main mediums. Yeah.
Awesome. So for those of you who have stuck around and listened, we appreciate it. We're going to be heading into the after hours portion here in a second. As we always do in these episodes, we do have two asks from you. One is, if you happen to find this episode to be valuable, please share it. Share it to a colleague, share it to your Instagram, your LinkedIn, whatever platform that you're using. Obviously, if you found value, I'm sure there's someone in your world that would also find value. The second ask is, in order to increase our listenership and visibility to the advisor community, reviews on iTunes would be a big help. So if you go ahead and leave us a review, and then simply screenshot that and shoot me a text to 978-228-2338. Again, that's 978-228-2338. What will happen is, you send that screenshot to me, you'll get an automatic reply that has you fill out your information, just your first name, last name, things like that. It will automatically get added to my phone. And then beyond that automated message, we can text one-on-one, so we can build a relationship from afar. Anytime you have any questions, feel free to touch base. But when you send that screenshot of the review, just make a note of John Pack in that text. That way I know which episode it is, because for those of you who submit a review, you will be put into a drawing to get a free coaching session from me, where we spend some time, take a deep dive into your business and make sure that you have some actionable ideas to be able to move forward and go and implement. So with that, I should say, Jonathan, thanks for joining the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Take care. That was great. I appreciate it. Do you head up, I know you're, on the partnership channel right now with Yext, but do you do any sales training yourself for others in the organization? Because I feel like a lot of the stuff that you've sent me via email could kind of be like picked apart, and like you can share the psychology behind it, and other people in your organization, I think, would find it helpful. And the other part too is maybe there's an opportunity to start to maybe document those things and modularize those things as like a giveaway to some of the people that use your service. Because again, it was an awesome flow all throughout.
I appreciate it. There is a collaborative element in the partner channel at Yext. I feel Yext is a great organization. I should have actually sung its praises. Yeah,
but you can do it now.
I'll do it now. Do it now. Yext is a fantastic organization. The partner channel I feel like we're pretty tight knit, and we're actually, some of us are the most like legacy employees. Like, yeah, I've been there 10 years, but I think all of us have been there at least 5. We all have a long history at Yext, so we've known each other a long time, and we sort of share. So when COVID hit, there was definitely a lot of communication too about, especially outreach. I'm sure that one of my colleagues, Julie Riel, had put together this wonderful opener, and I'm sure that's what I applied to the email I sent to you. That was sort of, I know things are really crazy right now. Yeah, so. But no, I appreciate it. I'll be sharing this with my leadership.
Awesome. Well, it's a great way to have someone else edify you as opposed to like, hey guys, I want to just let you know how awesome I am.
Oh, I know. It's great. No, it's great. I really appreciate it. And of course, I mean all the praise heap on you. It is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, is even on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is such a funny social platform where I feel like nobody is themselves.
Well, that's why you see like the memes, right? Where it's like me on LinkedIn, me on Facebook, me on Tinder or whatever,
Yeah. And so I've been thinking about that a lot, of like, do I start sharing this aspect of myself? Because, we were lucky enough for our annual sales kickoff to help. Do you know of Mel Robbins, the 5-second rule?
Oh yeah. I've read a couple of her books.
She did a Q&A with us. And
cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And somebody asked about work-life balance, and she said, this isn't about balance, it's about harmony, work-life harmony. And while she may have meant that in terms of, the harmony between these two aspects of your life, I have been thinking about the harmony between your authentic self and all of the things you do. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how you find harmony, it seems to me.
Yeah. And I think the more, I know for me, so like, I'll post things and you see, my stories, like I'll post things ranging from like the books I read to the workouts that I do, to the food I cook, all the way to the guns I shoot. Right.
Yep.
And everything in between. And what's interesting is that certain people, or it gives certain people the opportunity to connect with me on certain things. Right. So there may be people who don't like guns, right? As an example. Right. And living in Florida now, I'm like, hey, I'm going to, play. So, but then there's other people who are really into cooking. And I think what it allows them to choose what they want to like about you, as opposed to deciding that they don't like you for one particular thing.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like, throw a bunch of things on the board and you pick what you like.
Right. And people come out of the woodworks too. So even like you and your comedy, it's like, hey, that's cool. But like, under normal circumstances, pre-COVID and hopefully soon here post-COVID, if I'm not mistaken, you love to travel as well. So like making those experiences, more public gives people the opportunity to connect on those.
Yeah, it's true. The other question I have is like, how far do I navigate from as people have, my followership has come to expect comedic posts. And now it's like, well, I do a lot of cooking too. Is that going to interrupt their expectations of what, they follow me for? But that's my own.
I think you can say some funny shit while you're cooking. So maybe you combine it.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely true. Yeah, I've seen you stepped up your COVID cooking game too.
So comedy is one of your creative outlets. I'm probably the least creative person that there is. And I've had to like learn to borrow other creative ideas and repurpose them for myself. But cooking is my creative outlet. And I love the presentation at the end as well. So even for those of you who are still listening, if you follow me on Instagram, just at David_Decelle, DECELLE. One of the highlights that I have on my page is all the things that I've cooked, and I'm super type A, so like the presentation, I think anyways, is on point, but I'm open to feedback, of course.
I love it. I was not much of a cook, and then when COVID hit and we moved out to Joshua Tree, it was like, there's 5 restaurants out here and they're all mediocre. except for our friends, bar in Pioneer Town. Shout out to the Red Dog.
There you go.
Shout out to the Red Dog in Pioneer Town. We started doing a CSA box, and I had no idea how to properly cook vegetables or anything like that. So CSA, Community Supported Agriculture. So I get a box of produce every week, and I don't know what it's going to be, and I need to just figure out what to do with it. And man, I'm so grateful to have learned how to cook. It's such an important skill. And it's a fun one too. I never understood the creative aspect, David, until I started diving in.
Well, that's a good segue to some of our would you rather questions. So I'll toss a few at you before we close out. So would you rather have your own personal chef every day or instantly become a gourmet chef yourself?
Oh, instantly become a gourmet chef myself.
It's a good skill set.
Yeah.
Great skill set. Would you rather be allergic to sunlight or allergic to your own sweat? This is a tough one.
Yeah, because then, I mean, there are a lot of implications to both. It's like, do I want to be a shut-in or do I want to waste away and never exert myself? What are my allergic responses? How bad are we talking about?
Well, listen, when I looked up the question, they didn't give that information. So
I need to invent.
It would be hives that just made you look like a walking, like chickenpox person.
Okay, I'm going to take sunshine because I can still go out in the world and just have to, bring a parasol everywhere I go.
Would you, this is kind of a good one. Would you rather have an assistant reply to all of your emails or an assistant to do all of your grocery shopping and other shopping?
Shopping.
Love it.
Yeah.
And then finally, would you rather own 5 dogs or 10 cats?
5 dogs.
All right. I'm a dog guy too. You passed the test. We'll post it.
Both. I like both, but I grew up with cats, and now that I have this little dog, maybe he will come over. Gunner, he's a little Chihuahua. Man, I get it now. I get it.
Yeah.
They're like made to understand us, and we understand them in a way that cats are just like, whoa.
Cats would be fine if they had food and never saw you again, I feel like.
I think so. What did you?
They prefer it, maybe.
There was some sort of, I don't know how official this was, but they made it sound like it was an official study that was like, if you die, your cat's going to eat you in about 3 days. Like in 3 days, they will start to see you as food. And then dogs will just lay by your side and mourn you.
I wonder how many people had to get eaten during that study.
I know. It was a dangerous study to be a part of. I hope they were paid well, or their families were paid well.
Their families were paid well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, for those of you who stuck around for the after hours portion, we appreciate your time. Hopefully you got some laughs. If you want more laughs, go ahead and follow John on Instagram at John Pack, JONPACK. And if you'd like to connect with me on any of the platforms, just simply Google David DeSalle and you'll have all the links to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn on there. And if you want to learn more about Model FA and how we may be of service to you and or your organization, go to modelfa.com or just feel free to shoot me an email at david@modelfa.com. John, thanks for joining. Really appreciate your time. Looking forward to see how our relationship continues to develop and the business that we do together.
Likewise.
Awesome. Take care.
Thank you.